Hello, I'm John, and this is part 2 of my bookshelf tour. So I'll just jump right into it. We left off last time at the Morro Castle. Today we are to William Manchester's Last Line, Winston Spencer Churchill. This is a 3-volume set. So this is the first volume. This is Visions of Glory. It's about Winston's life from 1874 to 1932. This is really good. These are from many years ago. This is the first multi-volume biography I ever read. And I don't know, there was something about it. It's just solid. It reminded me of when I was young, some of the books that used to be on the older people's shelves, and I don't know, I don't really know exactly. I had read somewhere that the best biographies ever written were William Manchester's The Last Line and Robert Caro's The Years of Lyndon Johnson. So that's where I started, and this is just Winston's life is just a tremendous story, and William Manchester was just a great writer. So these are, I'd love to reread these sometimes. Sometime. I haven't read these since I was in my early 20s, somewhere in there. So this goes up until, so Winston's early life, it goes over his father, Lord Randolph, his mother, Jenny, and then his years in school, which he really did not enjoy school at all. He went on to, was it Harrow? One of the kind of the military academies. And then he joined the, was it like the Queen's Guard? It was a cavalry unit. He was sent to India. He lived in India for a while. Just a really truly epic story of this Victorian bulldog. I mean, it's just a really enthralling epic. Here's the second volume. This is Alone. This is he was still in Parliament, but he was out of power. He was kind of people kind of saw him as past his prime and kind of as a dinosaur, so he fooled them all. He came back. And then this is Defender of the Realm, 1940 to 1965. This is, I guess William Manchester knew that he was not going to live to finish this, so he got Paul Reed to help him finish it. A lot of people say that this is the weakest one. It's been so long since I've read it, and at the time I really wasn't capable of telling the difference between one writer and another. My mind was just elsewhere when I was younger. I was just very focused on the plot rather than the writing. But I don't remember it being particularly bad or anything. I mean, it would have been great if Manchester could have finished it, but he wasn't able to, so I'm glad somebody was able to finish it, because it was worth finishing. Let's see, this is a book by Winston Churchill. This is the story of the Malakan Field Force. I hope I said that right. So when Winston was in India, I'm not sure what year this was. Let's see, this was published in 1898. It took place in 1897. India, the British military in India, and what we now call, well, let's see, it's a little bit, the lines of nations have changed quite a bit in the last 120 years. So I believe this took place with the Afghan tribes. They took, the Indian army into Afghanistan to fight the Afghanis. Britain had a lot of trouble in Afghanistan in that period of time. Famously, Dr. Watson was a veteran of the British, one of the big battles in Afghanistan. But with Watson, it took place in the 1870s, and this is later on. And the people in that region were incredibly fierce warriors, and the British had a heck of a time. And in fact, I don't even remember if they were able to conquer them. I think they eventually just had to leave altogether. But it's pretty good. It's, Winston, as a very young man, writing about his, if I remember right, he managed to get he was in London, and something, this started going on, and so he found a newspaper to sponsor him, and he went all the way back to India, all the way back to Afghanistan, and I think so. I may be confusing that with something else. So the next is Plain Speaking. It's an oral biography of Harry S. Truman by Merle Miller. There's Harry Truman, the Missouri farmer who dropped the world's first 2 atomic bombs used in combat. So there is Merle Miller at work, and I really, really enjoyed this book. But as I've gotten older and realized, kind of the legacy of Harry Truman's decisions, I wasn't there. It's hard to stand here 80 years later and say what Truman should have done, but I can't help but think he could have went about it in a better way. Maybe dropping a giant bomb on civilian centers was not the best course of action. He never lost a moment of sleep over it. That's just the truth. Once he did something, he just forgot about it. He was incredibly practical. And, I would really have to go and make another video to go in depth about Harry Truman. So it is worth reading, though. I mean, it is a good book, and hearing Truman in his own words is very interesting. Next is December 7th, 1941, the day the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, by Gordon W. Prange, with Donald M. Goldstein and Catherine V. Dillon. Prange didn't live to see his books published, as far as I know. He died, and then other people finished his books or brought them up to a publishable quality. And this was really good. He wrote another book on Pearl Harbor, but it was really about kind of the lead up to Pearl Harbor and then the aftermath, the immediate aftermath, not so much about the actual attack on Pearl Harbor, where this is just the attack on Pearl Harbor. This is how the Japanese managed to get their ships within range, and how they put together these bombing raids, and what their goals were, and then the experiences of the people who were there. And it's really good. This is, if you see this, this is worth reading. Now the next is a 4-volume set, The Years of Lyndon Johnson, by Robert A. Caro. Caro, probably Caro. So you can see when I was younger, I was really into these bookmarks. I read this about 7 or 8 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, and this is the longest biography I've ever read. I mean, you're probably wondering, like, why would you want to read a biography about Lyndon Johnson? And it's because Lyndon Johnson's life was epic. He may have been a terrible man. He may have been, you know, he was not a particularly good person. He was incredibly focused on attaining power. He used people. He was just a bad person, really and truly. But his life was epic. This epic pursuit of power, the epic pursuit of the presidency. All of everything he did from when he was a very small boy up until he, became president and beyond, was all about attaining power. And it's really just incredible study. And it talks about his family in the Texas Hill Country, and it talks about the good things that Lyndon Johnson actually managed to do. He managed to bring electricity to Texas, and to a part of Texas, and Caro really goes on to how difficult it was for these people to live without electricity, and just how that changed people's lives. And then later on it goes into, of course, his time in the United States Senate, and there's, let's see, Means of Ascent. Here's Master of the Senate for when he was oh good Lord, was he the House Majority Leader? Or the Majority Leader. And this is the longest one. It's just, and then towards the end of this one, he becomes vice president under JFK. And here's the passage of power after the assassination of JFK, and his first year or so in office, or it may go all the way up to the first election he was involved, the first presidential election he won, or well, the only one. But it's, it's just an epic life. And if you're into political biography, you really kind of have to read this. I'm not really into political biography, but I set out to read really good biographies when I was younger, and that's so The Last Lion and The Years of Lyndon Johnson. Those are, I don't know if I'll ever read them again. They're very, they take a lot of energy. So, and then we have A Distant Mirror by Barbara Tuchman. There she is. This is, let's see, what years was this? This is the 14th century, so let's see, that's the 1300s, right? And it all centers around a kind of a, let's see, a French lord, kind of a baron or something. A baron, and all these battles, and just the, just how awful it would have been to be alive in Europe in that period of time, between all of the wars and the diseases and the double crossing. And at one point there were something like 2 or 3 popes, and they were all excommunicating each other, and there were just these armies of mercenaries and who just wandered around from place to place, just looting and burning and killing and just doing whatever they felt like. Just a terrible time to be alive. I mean, you can see, that says it all there. There's armies and an army of the dead, and it was just a bad time to be alive. But this is a really good book. After that, I read this one this year. This is Warriors at Suez by Donald Neff. And this is about the Suez crisis of 1957 or so. 1956. So, let's see, there's Eisenhower, and there is Egyptian President Nasser, and there is Anthony Eden, Prime Minister of Great Britain. This is, I think this is the, let's see, yes, that's Harold Macmillan there. So this is Eden on his way out of power. And basically, there was a time when Britain ruled Egypt, and then some things happened. Britain kind of gave up the control of Egypt, but they kept control of the Suez Canal. And President Nasser wanted to take control of the Suez Canal for Egypt. And it set off this big crisis where there was just this huge threat of a war, because people thought that the Soviet Union would leap into this fight. So it was quite a big deal, and around that time Eisenhower had had a couple of heart attacks. So he was kind of in a weakened state, and they just kind of sprung it on him. But this was a really pretty good read. So I probably didn't understand it as well as I would have liked to, but it was a good read. Now, I read this 7 years ago. This is John Adams by David McCullough. And there he is, and there's the price sticker I forgot to take off. So, Adams was a special human being, really. He was just incredible. He was an incredible person. He was a lawyer. He really led the charge to independence. He was good friends with Thomas Jefferson until they broke it off. He was, I don't know, he's just an incredible figure, really. I really enjoyed this book. And he was just so smart, so capable, and he had his own, he's really kind of a hard person to explain. You kind of have to read about Adams to get a flavor for him, or a feeling for him. He went to Harvard. He was he was a farmer. He was a lawyer. He was the second president of the United States. He was the father of a president. He was the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the French king. He was later on the U.S. ambassador to the British King George III. So he was the first president to live in the White House. And he was not without his flaws. He was very touchy. He was very temperamental. Just a really interesting guy. And I'm not doing him justice here, but this is just a really great book if you're interested. So, after that is another book I read not too long ago, and it's based on a TV series from the early 70s. It is Jacob Bronowski's The Ascent of Man. There's Dr. Bronowski. And this is just a really great book, you know. It's just transcripts really of the television series, which I watched some of it. I didn't get to watch all, or did I watch all of it? I can't remember. It may be on YouTube for free. I really can't remember. I know I watched parts of it. What is that? Joseph Priestley. It's really just about how kind of the progress of science and the progress of technology from the beginning up until the present, well, up until the 70s. And it was just, there's Albert Einstein. It's just a really good book. Just really, I mean, it's out of date, sure, you know, and it uses terms that we wouldn't use in the present, but it's still just a really interesting book, just a really interesting series to watch. I mean, if you want to read the book or watch the series, either one would be fine, but like I said, just keep in mind that it is from 50 years ago. Things have changed. So that's The Ascent of Man by Jacob Bronowski, who unfortunately he did pass away not too long after this was made. Yeah, that's The Ascent of Man. After that we have American Dreams Lost and Found by Studs Terkel, which is basically where Studs Terkel was that fellow right there. He went around talking to people about all kinds of things, really. He had a book about working, he had a book about World War II, and just quite a few of these books. There were 2 of these, I think, and I have it upstairs. I haven't read it yet. And he just went around talking to people about kind of their experiences in life and how America was treating them, how it treated them when they were younger, or, you know, what their dreams were. The only problem with Studs' books is that he didn't always kind of provide a context. So if somebody mentioned a factory or someplace, he wouldn't tell us where it was, or he might not tell us how old the person he was talking to was, or in what city they lived in. So it could be a little bit confusing if you didn't know certain aspects of American history that are pretty obscure to us now in the present. But since this is running on so long, I think I'll call that an end to this part 2. So if you've seen any of these books you think you'd like to hear about more, just let me know. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.